Hello, Bills Mafia, Buffalo Fanatics supporters, friends, family, anyone who's joining us on this Sunday evening. Happy to have you guys back. This is the second episode of the Writer's Room here for this off season. We're going to continue to do it every 7 p.m. Eastern on Sundays for the rest of this off season. This week, I am privileged to have Alec back on the show. We couldn't get Eric. He's out of town, but he'll be back. We're waiting on Zach. Zach's got himself a big boy job, so he's a little scattered at the moment, but he'll be with us, new editor-in-chief of the Buffalo Fanatics blog. So yeah, I'm joined by Alec tonight. Alec, how are you doing?
Not so bad. Yourself?
Oh, I mean, it could be better, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Always striving to improve.
Yes, sir.
So really the main thing that I want to talk about today, obviously, because it happened this morning, and I guess we'll get people's opinions in the chat and stuff like that. But Alec, how do you feel about this Julio Jones trade? How do you feel about him being traded within the conference to an opponent, the Titans, that we're going to play this year? First opinions on, who you think won the trade, maybe. If you're scared now by the Titans, if you're not scared by the Titans, whatever your first impressions are on this Julio Jones trade, and then I'll give my opinions.
Yeah, so personally, I'm terrified of the Titans now. They have that great run game with Derrick Henry. You can't really stop him. He went for over 2,000 yards last year. He's an animal. Plus, they have A.J. Brown on the outside. So pairing Julio Jones with A.J. Brown, that's going to be a problem next year. Like, no one's going to be able to realistically guard them both at the same time. You're going to have two legit number one cornerbacks to even keep up in man coverage.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, those two paired together, because, I mean, last year you saw it with him and Corey Davis, A.J. Brown, that is, and Corey Davis, and then they get rid of Corey Davis, and the replacement for him is Julio Jones. Massive upgrade. Obviously,
Right.
It costs a little bit more. But, I mean, Davis signed a pretty sizable deal with the Jets, so, you could argue they're not really losing a whole lot in terms of the financial side of it, and they're gaining a whole lot in terms of on-field production. So it's a real good argument to be made for, what the Titans have done this offseason, because at first it seemed like, wow, what are they doing with this wide receiver room? Obviously, They didn't know Julio was going to be as available as he was, but I mean, they clearly had a plan, and they understood that A.J. Brown is the future, but they needed to surround him with something. And boy, is that a supplemental piece. Like, that's more than a supplemental piece.
That's way more than a something.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I agree with you. It's definitely frightening, especially from an offense that, runs the ball a lot, but the amount of play action that they run off of those it gets guys wide open. And if you're running like 12 personnel with just Julio and AJ Brown on the field as your two wide receivers, like, that's scary. You might be in a running set, but you can pass out of it with those two wide receivers on the outside. It's going to be tough to defend.
Yeah, easily be able to stretch the ball down the field with them two outside and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, it's going to be scary. That being said, you said in general, you're definitely threatened and you're concerned about them. What do you think about their defense, though? Because that's where I get a little bit of pause, and I'm like, yeah, I'm scared of this offense for sure, but I don't know if they improved all that much on defense. They might have actually regressed this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. Like, their defense isn't that good. They don't have that many good pieces on defense. They lost a lot of talent in the last couple of years, but it's an offensive league. It's all pointing towards the offensive side of the ball, and all the calls are going the offense's ways. So if you can't put your hands on Julio, you can't put your hands on A.J. Brown. I don't know how you're going to be able to get a good stop on them. They're going to be running amok in the secondary the whole game.
Yeah, that's a good point. It certainly is an offensive league, and it's a quarterback-driven league. And you saw Julio say that he wants to go play for a big-arm quarterback. Find it a little curious that he picked Ryan Tannehill, or maybe it wasn't really his choice at the end. He just kind of wanted to go to a contender. I just thought it was funny that Tannehill ended up being the quarterback. No slight against Tannehill, but what do you think?
I agree. I don't think Tannehill's got the biggest arm, but I mean, he can get the job done. He's proved it the last couple of years. I mean, he's, especially with the run game and all that, like, he doesn't have to do too much to be successful. So I think he can get the job done.
Yeah, I think we all definitely have a weird assessment of what Ryan Tannehill is as Bills fans, because we knew what he was with the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had some games, he had some years really with the Dolphins, but he's been a interesting guy to evaluate. But I think he's good for that Titans offense, and I think he'll be an upgrade for Julio Jones in terms of what Matt Ryan is, because Matt Ryan is a very good quarterback still. He's just not the modern quarterback, and he can't get himself out of trouble the way a Ryan Tannehill can. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what that offense is going to look like this year. Hopefully we'll find a way to combat it, and we'll be able to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on here, we'll jump straight into Alec's piece of this week, and it focused on the offensive line. Really, you broke down specifically like assignments for running game and passing game, and then you broke down the running game between zone blocking and man gap power scheme blocking. Yep. So first off, I would like you to explain why this is near and dear to you.
So back in the day, I used to be an offensive lineman. I played for 14 years. It was just a long time, a lot of time spent learning all of these plays, all of these schemes and all that. So I feel like I'm pretty relatively well-versed in this kind of conversation.
Definitely more so than me. I might be doing the film sessions and stuff like that, but when it comes to offensive linemen, I'm talking out of my ass a little bit. So I'm glad to have you here. So I'll jump right into run blocking. When it comes to man gap power, and specifically, I mean, we know it's like obviously all that pulling, like the pin pull stuff that the Bills like to do with Mitch Morse, things like that. But do you think man gap power is something the Bills are going to want to get back to this year based on maybe personnel moves, like certain players they brought in this year? We know we brought back a lot of the same guys. So it's kind of interesting because we know that we leaned a little bit more zone last year. Mm-hmm. What do you think Daboll's trying to do this year, considering, the lack of changes and maybe the lack of efficiency last year and production off those few opportunities?
Yeah, I definitely think we need to sprinkle in the power game a little bit more. We do have a relatively good offensive line, and I believe that we can run power, but I think it's more based on our backfield. We don't really have that big power bruising back. All of our backs are relatively shifty and smaller, so I feel like that's why we keep running the zone running scheme. It just works. They find their hole that they want to hit, and they hit it hard, and they just go. So I feel like that will continue to be the case, but I definitely think we should mix in a little bit of power here and there. I think Zach Moss could definitely get it done in the power game.
I think so too. It's really interesting. I think Cover One did a breakdown of offensive line versus running back issues, and they were saying that Singletary did better Singletary fared better when it was power blocking in front of him, and Moss actually did better when it was zone blocking in front of him, which I thought was very interesting. I mean, kind of just trying to connect the dots. I imagine it's more just the college game. I feel like the offense that Zach Moss was a part of was less man gap power based, and Singletary's was a lot more at FAU, more man gap power based. But yeah, when you think about the running back, you're like, yeah, it would seem like Moss would be the guy who would succeed more in the power running scheme, and Singletary would do better in the zone running scheme. So it is a little bit interesting from that standpoint. I think it's definitely going to be interesting for each of those guys coming off the years that they just had. Obviously, Moss with the injury, the high ankle sprain at the end of or at the beginning of the playoffs, and then Singletary with the resculpting of his body this year. It could be completely different. Like, we don't know. So that actually leads me into my next question. When you look back retrospectively at last year, do you think it was more a run blocking issue, offensive line issue, or do you think it was a running back issue in terms of efficiency on those few running plays that we did have last year?
Personally, I do think it is kind of mostly the running back's fault. I believe our offensive line did a relatively good job of blocking up front. From what I saw and what I was paying attention to, I feel like they did their job up front. But, I mean, we had young running backs, year one, year two. It's going to take some time for them to develop and be able to play an NFL scheme and be able to get past NFL defensive linemen and be able to find the holes and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because of the regression that Singletary had particularly. And obviously you're going to have some rookie struggles like we saw with Zach Moss.
Mhm.
But for Singletary, it's particularly interesting because we saw him outshine like Frank Gore and even Shady a little bit in the preseason of his rookie year.
Right.
So it's interesting to see him regress, but I think a lot of it had to do with the regression in terms of opportunity. He didn't have a lot of opportunities, and the offense really changed a lot where it used to lean on that running back, and now it's completely dependent on Josh Allen and what Josh Allen's doing. So it had to be tough for him, and now he's going to have to, work with the opportunities that he gets. So it's going to be interesting how they move forward and how they build on such a weird year last year. But I want to get your opinion specifically on John Feliciano, because personally, when I was watching last year, I noticed a huge increase in running production the second Feliciano came back in the lineup. Mm-hmm. What about you? What do you think about that opinion of mine? And what do you think about Feliciano in general?
I think Feliciano in the run game is probably either our best or one of our top 3 best run blockers on the team. Mm-hmm. So with him coming into the game, I believe it does help out our run game tremendously. Mm-hmm. And I believe in the pass game is where he struggles. He needs to get a little more athletic, be able to set a little bit better. But in the run game, I completely agree.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about him. And that's probably going to lead me right into my tough question for you. What do you think the offensive line is going to be this year? Because I feel like people are all over the place, especially with the Bills drafting 2 tackles in a row in this draft. Like, people are saying, obviously there's Pierre saying maybe Spencer Brown's going to pop in there at right tackle and push Darrell Williams into right guard. What do you think is going to happen? What do you project? How do you prefer this offensive line to roll out in week 1 of this 2021 Buffalo Bills season?
For at least for week 1, I believe we run it back. Same offensive line. Run it back with Dawkins, run it back with Feliciano, Morse, Ford, and Darrell Williams. They played relatively good last year. We went 13-3 with them playing up front. Continuity is huge on the offensive line. Being able to know who you're playing next to and know their tendencies and what they like to do, what they can and can't do, makes a huge difference in being able to work as a unit as an offensive line.
Yeah, I want to pick something different from you, but it's really hard for me to do that. Like, I love the potential and the upside that we could get from Spencer Brown. It's just tough for me to want to pencil him in at right tackle before I've really seen anything. Obviously, I've seen everything I can from college film and YouTube film, stuff like that, but I want to see what he's going to do with a Bills jersey on, a Bills practice jersey on. I want to see how he's going to do against this NFL talent, because we all know how athletic he is, but, where's that balance of athletic prowess and his technical ability? I want to see how he can handle himself. Like, we heard early comments about him. I think McDermott was like, oh, he's got really quick feet. And it's like, yeah, we knew he was athletic. Like, I'm not so thrilled to hear that he's got quick feet. Like, we already knew that. I want to know other things, like how is he doing with leverage? Like, the dude's 6'10" almost. Like, our shorter, stouter guys giving him an issue. So there's a lot of questions I have with Spencer Brown, just in terms of what he's gonna be in 2021. But I'm really excited for him in the future. What about you?
I genuinely think that he could be like a mid-season switch up, and he could end up being in the starting lineup right in the mid-season. He's definitely has the talent and the size to be a year 1. I'm going to come out and I'm going to play well. But, it's a big jump going from college to the NFL. So it's all about pad level with him being so high.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of it. I'm trying to think. So here's the controversial one, and I think a lot of people in the chat will probably agree with this. It's Cody Ford. And we both, I mean, if I have to roll out another offensive line or the projected offensive line for 2021, I'm going to stick with you and I'm going to do chalk. I'm going to say same one, left to right. It's Dawkins, Ford, Morse, Feliciano, and Williams. But Ford, people are going to question Ford because he hasn't done it. He hasn't shown consistency, and he needs to prove more to us. I put out a thread about Cody Ford, just like 10 plays or so, something like that, in the week 1 game against the Jets. And the biggest takeaway I could gather from him is he looked a lot better when he was like pulling, when they were in power schemes, when they were running the football in power schemes. He looked really good. And honestly, his game reminds me a lot of John Feliciano. He seems to excel a lot more in that running style where he's being that bully and he's the aggressor instead of when he has to drop back into his set and let the play come to him. It looks like he gets manipulated too easily. He just doesn't quite have that reactive athleticism to keep up with some of these more athletic interior defensive linemen. What do you think about Cody Ford in terms of, I don't know, maybe drafting him in the second round a couple years back, his process this entire time, him having to change positions, stuff like that, and what you expect from him this coming year?
So it just in general for run game, the man gap power scheme is a lot easier as an offensive lineman because you have a specific assignment. You're not like, I don't have to step to a spot and I'm watching for someone to cross my face. You have, I'm going to hit number XYZ and I'm going to put him on his ass.
Right. Yeah, that definitely makes sense because, if you're like an outside zone, which we saw the Bills want to do a lot last year, you just kind of have to flow with the rest of the offensive line and you kind of have to react. It's a lot more about reactions and seeing like, oh, okay, this guy's coming to my zone and you have to go pick him up. So it's a lot more like quick twitchy. It's a lot more reactiveness. And like you said, with the man gap power stuff, it's like, this guy, like you're going to this general area for a purpose because there's going to be someone there on the defense. So it's a lot more, it's schemed up more definitively.
Right.
But I would definitely like to see us get away from that outside zone stuff next year. I don't know about you. I just don't think we have the personnel outside of I think Mitch Morse is probably our best player in terms of like an outside zone because I really like his lateral movement skills. But outside of that, like the other two interior offensive linemen, I don't really trust them. But I like Dion Dawkins. I like his ability to get out and run.
When he gets on the outside.
Yeah, he's good. But outside of that, like it's really, I guess it's just Dawkins and Morse. I'm not too thrilled about Darrell Williams in the running game. I liked him a lot in the passing game when it comes to pass protection. But I didn't see a whole lot last year that really resonated with me in terms of his run blocking. So I'd like to see them get away from that outside zone a little bit more. I have no problem with the zone stuff, but I want to see them specifically get a little bit away from the outside zone, get back more towards neutral and do some man gap power and zone stuff.
Yeah, I definitely believe our offensive line would be very happy with that.
All right, so we're going to jump into relevant news and notes. And outside of, obviously, the Julio Jones stuff, in between last Sunday and now, Stefon Diggs restructured his contract, and it freed up, I believe, $7.8 million in cap space for us. And, of course, Bill's Twitter goes nuts. What the hell are we doing here? Like, what's going on? Are we freeing up space for someone specifically? Like, what's happening? So everyone's just trying to speculate, figure out what's going to happen, throw stuff at the wall. Hopefully something sticks. Initially, everyone was thinking maybe this is for Julio Jones. Obviously, that's off the table. 4 or 5 days ago, we heard people saying like the Zach Ertz deal is going to be done by the weekend. Here we are on Sunday. Nothing's happened of that. So I want to get your initial opinions on the restructure in terms of, just bringing Diggs back in a way where it pushes more money down the road in the future and almost essentially ties him up as a mainstay for this team and someone that we're going to continue to lean on.
Yeah. Personally, I love it. I'm a huge Stefon Diggs fan. I think damn near everybody in Buffalo is. But I think the restructure is just a smart GM play by Bean. Either way, we're going to need that money for either down the road or today. We can go pick somebody up and have someone that's going to help our team right now. But even if somebody gets hurt, we can go pick someone up down the road.
Right. So that jumps into my next point. Do you think this move to restructure Diggs was made with a specific player in mind, a specific free agent in mind, a Zach Ertz, a Julio Jones for trade, something like that, with a specific player in mind to go get? Or do you think it was just meant to increase flexibility, just to give Brandon Beane some more space to work with if, some player gets cut in the coming days and now he has the space to give them an offer they would actually like to take? Right. Do you think it was more generally for flexibility, or do you think it was for a player?
I definitely think it was more for flexibility. I don't think he ever walks into something like, I need to get this player right now, and that's all I think about. I think he's like, all right, I have all this money to play around with. Let's see where I can get with it. Let's see who's available right now. Let's see who's on the table.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we all try to predict what Brandon Beane's going to do when we really shouldn't, because this dude is very unpredictable. Like I think we can all predict that what he's going to do is going to be good, because we all like almost every move he makes.
Yep.
But it's so hard to predict what the move is going to be, because he's so strategic and he's just taking his time, being patient, waiting for things to come to him instead of going and grabbing them. I think the one counter to me saying that is in Bill's Embedded. He said how he's so impatient when it comes to the draft and he always loves to trade up, and he can't wait for these guys. When it comes to making like their pro scouting department, when it comes to making moves with players that are already in the league, it seems like he's so good with just setting his price and sticking to it and making sure he doesn't overpay if it comes to free agency or trades. But then when it goes to rookies, he's just like out the window with that. The dude's just like, I got to get my guys. So it's very curious, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's playing chess. Everyone else is playing checkers.
Love it. Can't stop without it. So Derry 17th, thank you for the super chat. If you want to enter anything in the chat, if you have a specific question, I'll look out for your name and I'll post that there, because you jump to the top of the line in terms of questions if you super chat. So toss in a question if you got one. I'll be on the lookout for it. So jumping off the point about Brandon Beane and free agent moves, him playing chess, everyone else playing checkers. We said it was, I think we both agreed that it was more a flexibility move than anything. It wasn't specific players in mind. However, if there's a specific player in mind, and we'll exclude Zach Ertz first, and we'll come back to Zach Ertz.
Okay.
If it's a free agent specifically, are there any free agents out there right now that you're looking at? Because there's a few that are on my radar, but are there any that you would be really excited to bring in with this newfound cap space?
Personally, just because of the Julio Jones trade that happened, I think Richard Sherman will be a huge pickup for the Bills. He's a big body corner. He's got experience on a championship team, on the best defense in the NFL, and he's just a great locker room presence. Like, I feel like he would really help our young cornerbacks develop. He knows what it takes to be at that highest level of cornerback. Yeah,
I'll jump off that and give a Steven Nelson kind of take.
Yeah.
It's very interesting with the Steven Nelson versus Richard Sherman when it comes to who we should sign, because I think we can all agree Richard Sherman's probably past his, not probably, he is past his prime, but he's still got something left in the tank. Mm-hmm. Similar to Josh Norman. Like, we knew what we were getting with Josh Norman. He wasn't going to be any sort of world beater, but he had something left in the tank, and he did give us that something. Mm-hmm. So there's something to be had with Richard Sherman. It's not going to be that top tier production, but he comes with top tier knowledge and stuff to pass on to these younger guys. When it comes to Steven Nelson, it's like, he'll probably be a better player in terms of production.
Right.
But I'm not sure we need that, because more than anything, we just need depth at this cornerback position. And we do have a lot of young guys at the cornerback position. So it would be nice to get someone with that kind of wealth of knowledge. Before I wasn't really in on Richard Sherman this whole offseason. I was just kind of like, if we have the money, if he's willing to take like a really close to veteran minimum type of deal, I'd be into it. But you made a good point there, saying like we got to combat Julio Jones. God knows Trey White has issues with bigger wide receivers. Not all the time, but that's like one of his.
That's one of his only knocks.
Yeah, he really doesn't have a lot, but it is one of them. And he still does fairly well against those bigger receivers. But if you got to find a point to give a weakness at Tre'Davious White, like that is it. We saw him struggle with AJ Green for years. Players like that. So, I mean, I'm not saying we're gonna go pick up Richard Sherman just so he could lock up Julio Jones in week 5 or whatever it is. But I really like what it does in terms of giving knowledge to the younger guys, like a Levi Wallace, should we retain him for next year? Dane Jackson specifically. Jackson specifically, because this
Completely
dude,
agree.
I think Dane Jackson, it seems like he's such an instinctual and intelligent player as is, and really everything he has left to prove to us is probably more on the athletic side. But there's never a point where these guys are unwilling to learn. We know how humble and hungry is the mindset, growth mindset, all of that stuff. Like, these guys are all willing to learn if they're wearing a Bills uniform. So I'm with you on this Richard Sherman stuff. Jumping off cornerback though, personally, before we had this conversation, I'm kind of flip-flopping here, but I want to get your point. I was in on defensive tackle. I was in on getting a defensive tackle to bolster that room, because I think that's one of our areas that we lack depth on this roster. Are there any defensive tackles that you have your eye on, if you even have your eye on defensive tackles at all?
Yeah, I definitely do. I feel like that's another need. Our needs are definitely cornerback number 2 or 3, and then defensive tackle, interior defensive tackles. So, I mean, I like Sheldon Richardson personally. We've watched him play a lot. He used to play for the Jets. We've seen what he can do. He's had production. I feel like he could be a really good fit. He's great in the run game. I think that could be a good fit for us.
Yeah, I also, it's been very interesting because everyone's been talking about the Jurrell Casey stuff, and the more and more we talk about Jurrell Casey, the more and more I kind of think, why is it that he's not being signed? Like, what's going on? And it probably has something to do with his injury history, specifically the past like 2 or 3 years, whatever it was. Judge brought it up, I think, in our last air raid hour on Thursday, and he was saying, like, yeah, pretty much since he got to Denver, he really hasn't been healthy. Like, he was great with the Titans and all-pro. I don't know if he was all-pro, but he was Pro Bowl caliber. Yeah, but then when he got to the Denver, it was just injury riddled, not much he can control there. But it makes me wonder why is he not getting signed now post injury? So it gives me some cause for concern. And then that next guy up is Sheldon Richardson, like you said. And yeah, there's people talking about like K'Wan Short, Geno Atkins. I think Atkins is low on the list for me. I think I would probably have Short over Atkins, then probably Casey over those two. And I really think Richardson might be my number 1. So I see some people in here, Chris Janke, saying Richardson is a good player, but he's not a 1 tech. I agree with you. He is not a 1 tech. However, he's a 3 tech that I think could be a lot more serviceable at 1 tech than a lot of the other guys we have on this roster. His natural ability to anchor and his natural strength really makes me, and there's a lot of plays out here where he's not just pass rushing. Like, this dude can truly stop the run, and it's not beyond him to be able to clog gaps and stop the run. So I agree. Sheldon Richardson is definitely one I think has been flying under the radar for whatever reason it is amongst Bills fans, but he's someone I wouldn't be upset if we went and grabbed him, because like Chris said, like, I do want a 1 tech, like I do, but there aren't a lot of those available. And if they are, like, if there are 1 techs available, people are going after them because there is a value to, a bargain bin type of player at 1 tech, because they're not on the field all the time. So if you're getting them at a bargain, it's even better. So that's kind of this area, this weird, like, little purgatory we're in with Sheldon Richardson. Lone Wolf comes in and says Mike Pennell. I haven't heard this name a lot until like probably the last like 24 hours. I think people have started talking about him, which is kind of funny. Do you have any thoughts on Mike Pennell?
Honestly, I haven't done enough research on him, so I don't have too much on him.
No worries, man. I was literally asking you because I'm in the same boat. I was hoping that you had some more knowledge on him than I did. No, I definitely have to look into him, because all of a sudden he's like one of those names that people are talking about available on the free agent market. So we'll circle back here on this Stefon Diggs stuff and the cap room that was created, and we'll circle back to Zach Ertz. I really just want to get your opinion on the potential to sign Zach Ertz, because obviously we all hear the rumors and what it may or may not be, but would you be happy with it? What kind of cost would you be happy with it? Like, if it was this kind of draft pick that we would have to give up, is this the reason you wouldn't be happy with it? Where do you stand when it comes to acquiring Zach Ertz?
So obviously it's a great thing to be able to get a top 5 tight end in the NFL, even at this point. But personally, I'm not too big on getting Zach Ertz. I believe we should save all of our draft picks, save our money, and focus on defense more than we focus on offense. I feel like we have a good offense. Dawson Knox just spent an offseason working with Josh Allen, doing all these drills together, spending all that time playing board games. I think they made a good connection. I think they have chemistry now. He also focused on all of his hand-eye coordination and stuff. He focused on catching the balls. So he doesn't want to drop any more touchdowns. So I think you got to give him the shot. He's still young.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like we need to give Knox every opportunity he can get this year, and I am worried about taking away those opportunities by signing someone or acquiring someone like Ertz. Yeah, it's undeniable. Like if you get someone like Ertz, you said top 5 tight end, and like people might scoff at that and be like, no way, he's not a top 5 tight end anymore. I think he's if he's not, he's right on the cusp of that.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, he's had some unproductive years recently. He's dealt with some injuries. He's dealt with the regression of Carson Wentz and everything that was going on in Philly. But this guy's still a top tier tight end. He might not be up there with like the top like 2 guys like Kelsey and Kittle, Waller. Like he's not those guys anymore, but he still has a lot left in the tank. And I think a better situation would mean the world to him. But I do worry about what it would do to the Dawson Knox development. I don't think it would severely take away from that. It's just, are we going to run 12 personnel? Like, are we going to lean into that a little bit more just because we have 2 tight ends that we're confident in? Like right now, do you say we don't get Ertz? Do you think we're doing a lot of 12 personnel with Knox and Hollister?
I mean, I think more than we did last year, but I don't think it's
low ball. That's a low bar to clear.
Right.
That's a low bar to clear. Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. I think I agree with you. I agree with you that it's probably going to be more than last year because I think we just have better depth and we like the players we have at that position this year. For whatever reason, it just seemed like the coaching staff and everyone wasn't too keen on Tyler Kroft, even though he seemed to be productive every chance he got.
Yeah.
It just seemed like the coaching staff wasn't willing to give him more opportunities. Maybe Hollister is that kind of player where they're willing to go 2 tight end sets. Maybe he's not. Maybe they just wanted him as depth. Who knows? The point is here, Ertz is clearly an upgrade in terms of what we currently have, but do we want to continue to put all of our eggs in the Dawson Knox basket? Because it is risky to do that. So it could go both ways. Personally, I think because of the reasons you laid out with the whole Dawson Knox thing, because I do think he's put in the work this offseason. Like we see it. Like you alluded to it perfectly with the relationship he's building with Josh Allen, like we saw him do with Stefon Diggs last year.
Yep.
Like that means something. That really does. So I don't want to put all my eggs in that basket, but I do believe in him more than I did coming into this offseason. Like coming into this offseason, I was like, I want to draft a tight end in the first round. Yeah, then I quickly got off of that. Like I've been all over the place with tight end because we're all over the place with our opinions of Dawson Knox because he's just been so inconsistent. So I think for me, I think the cost is probably a 5th rounder for Ertz that I'd be willing to go with. Ertz is the player himself. He's worth more than a 5th rounder. It's just the contract and his age that dampens his value. Right. And it's really not fair to him or the Eagles because he is better than a 5th round compensation. But that's just as far as I'd be willing to go, especially because of how well-rounded our roster is and how much depth we have at all positions. Like we're complaining about depth at tight end. We're complaining about depth at defensive tackle. We're complaining about depth at cornerback. But at the end of the day, we actually have more depth than a lot of other teams in the league at those positions, at our weakest positions of depth. Right. So, yeah, I don't know. It's really tough for me to like give anything more than that day 3 draft pick compensation for someone like Zach Ertz.
Yeah, I don't think Bean would be going for it either. He hates giving away his draft picks.
Right, exactly. And we heard him talk about it. I think it was in Embedded. He was like, I hated sitting around in that 4th round. Like he talked about like, oh, I'm so happy
we finally
cost
finished
we
off
paid
the Diggs.
It was so funny. He's just like, I am so happy we finally paid for Diggs. Because I mean, there were a lot of good players that went between Spencer Brown and Tommy Doyle. Like there were a lot of good players that they missed out on, but it was worth Stefon Diggs. I think we can all agree that it was worth Stefon Diggs. All right, so I'll move on now to another relevant topic, somewhat recent, the Star Lotulelei clip. I wanted to get your opinions on it. Obviously, we talked about the whole 3-tech, 1-tech stuff. You know the clip I'm talking about, right? The 5-second, 6-second clip of Star just like jumping over some hurdles and tackling the tackling dummy and all that stuff. What do you think, man? What do you make of it? Like, do you think he's under 300 pounds?
I think it's close. I think he might be like 290, 295. But yeah, I think he's looking more like a 3-tech now. He's looking pretty athletic too. He's looking nimble at that weight.
Right. It's so interesting because like we want this 1-tech, we want this run clogger, we want this guy that's finally going to help our woes and help out Tremaine Edmonds, things like that, because a 1-tech really does help the 2nd and 3rd level play faster and play better, play a lot easier. It's just a lot easier to make reads when you see two offensive linemen just stuck on one guy. So I'm personally not too worried about it. We saw Jordan Poyer, I think he was in his press conference, just like really praising and raving about what a team player that Star is and how he's willing to do whatever he can for the team to open up opportunities for other people and how he doesn't really care about the stat line and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm concerned he looks a little bit lighter, but we got a lot of time until the first snap of the regular season.
Very true.
I think he could put some weight on. I don't think like he could stand to put some weight on it. It won't. It looks like he has a frame to add that weight, and it won't be unhealthy weight.
Right.
So, what do you think? Final thoughts on Star, and if we need a new 1-tech?
I personally do like Star. I think he will be good if he comes back, and he's not going to be if he's healthy and he comes back right. But I also believe he has a great connection with Bean and McDermott. He's played for them before, so he knows their system. He knows everything they want to have done. So I believe it is a big part of him coming back is the coaching staff.
Yeah, I agree. He's a big staple in that, in what that like Carolina defense was and what they like to do, the Sean McDermott defense. So yeah, I don't think he's going to miss a beat in terms of schematics and stuff like that. But it is going to be all about the physical nature of the game and just how he can reacclimate himself to game speed.
Right.
So that's all we got in terms of immediate news. But Alec, I want to ask you, is there anything specific that's on your mind that you'd like to talk about? Recent signings, recent draft picks. We haven't had the opportunity to have a whole lot of live coverage with you, Alec. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you want to get off your chest. Is there anything specific that you'd like to talk about, Bills centric?
Yeah, personally, I'm big on the Reid Ferguson signing that happened a couple weeks ago. I think having a good long and short snapper is a huge part of the game. That's a huge field position battle. Like, look at in the playoffs last year when the Browns played the Steelers. First play of the game, snap goes over Big Ben's head. Browns score. Steelers can't recover from that. That's the difference. Field position battle is huge. And I think having a long snapper that can put the ball on the same point every time and always have a good snap is a huge part of having successful special teams.
That's a great point. Specifically that Steelers game. Like, I think that there wasn't just one, like there were multiple. The Ravens game too, the playoff game. Weren't there a bunch of bad snaps to Lamar in that game? Like, yep. I mean,
the one that made him get a concussion was a bad snap.
Exactly. So it's more important than people understand. Like, yep. Morse, obviously, like we understand how important Morse is, but just think about all the points that Tyler Bass put on the board this year and how many could have been taken off the board if there was just a bad snap. We all complain about like the Corey Bojorquez and how bad he was at holding, but like imagine if he was as bad as he was at holding, but he also had a bad long snapper.
Exactly.
It really could have compounded the issue. Yeah, it's funny. People don't talk about the long snapper, but they need the respect. Like they really do. They don't get a lot of opportunities, but when they do, like it really matters. And there's probably an immense amount of pressure on those moments. But yeah, it's funny. Any other thoughts about Reid Ferguson or giving love to those long snappers?
I mean, not really. I do love a good long snapper, though. I pay a lot of attention. I played long snapper and I played, so I do like to pay attention.
No, it's a real skill. Like I've tried it once or twice. Like it's hard. It's tough.
It's all about footwork, positioning, all that stuff. It's very important.
I feel like it's all like triceps or something. Like
it's more forearm. So you grip the ball, the one finger on like the back lace, and then and then you rotate it.
Like massive spin. Oh,
yep.
It's so technical. You'd think it's the easiest thing in the world. It's really not. It's really not. I know. Like if you guys really don't believe us, like go try to do it like accurately. What is
15 yards.
It 15 yards? Yeah.
12 to 15 depending on your team.
Try to do it. Like it's really not easy. Just, grab a friend, grab a football. Like try not to get dizzy either. All right, we're going to jump into the comments here. If you guys have any questions, go for it because we're unscripted right now. We're out of stuff. So if you guys got questions, we'll answer them. So we'll start with Chris Janke here. If Bean uses the Diggs money to extend Josh Allen, is it going to feel anticlimactic or will you be happy? I'll start with you, Alec.
Personally, I will be happy. I think Josh Allen deserves the money, so I won't be mad that we're giving the money to Josh Allen and keeping him in Buffalo for however many years we decide. But it will be a little anticlimactic. I agree.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that where it's anticlimactic to be like, oh, look, we freed up all this cap space in an offseason where there's a lot of players still sitting on the market that are good players. So it's anticlimactic in that respect where there are players we would all like to add to this team. But really, adding a player to this team means kicking someone else off of this team. There aren't a lot of guys on this team that I'd be willing to part ways with. There's a lot of guys that I don't even think are going to make this team, and I'm upset about that. So adding talent to this team is tough. It really is. So I'm going to be perfectly fine with this money going towards making it easier to sign people in future years because it's going towards a Josh Allen extension, a Tremaine Edmonds extension. Hell, maybe this is just staying in the bank and it's going towards Diggs extension in 2022.
Yeah,
like it could stay in the bank that long. But you're right, Chris. It will definitely be anticlimactic. It's just sometimes prudency is anticlimactic, and we're just gonna have to deal with it because Bean's the wizard. we got to deal with the boring moves he makes because sometimes a boring move is the right move. So we'll jump into the next question from Seth. Morse was the number one paid center when we signed him. Has he underplayed his contract?
I don't think he's underplayed his contract. I feel like he's played relatively well. The only concern is obviously a couple of injuries, but even at that point, I still think he has performed well enough and up to his contract. Center is a huge position. There was not really that many bad snaps. I haven't seen many bad snaps from him, if any.
Yeah, I think it's really tough to hold Morse's production and his play to his contract value because if you think back to that free agent class, we overpaid on every single free agent we signed that year because we were coming off one of the worst rosters in Bills history. I mean, I'm probably being too hyperbolic there, but let's be honest, Josh Allen's rookie year to his second year, that was bad. Those teams were bad. It's tough to recruit players to play in Buffalo already without what we know it is now and what the culture is now. Recruiting people then is hard. That's why we had to release John Brown because we signed him to a figure that was more than what he was worth, but that's what it took to get him into town and to help out Josh Allen. I think that's the same kind of thing with Morse. We had to pay him that much. We had to make him the highest paid center in the league just to get him into town. I wasn't thrilled that we made him the highest center in the league, but I was thrilled that we got him on the team. So it's a double-edged sword, but it's one we just kind of have to deal with because without it, who's our center? You know, like, yeah, maybe it could have been Feliciano, but then who's our right guard? Like, it just creates other problems. Effect. Exactly. And we had the money to spend at that point. Now the financial part is going to start being a big part of building this team with the Josh Allens and the Tremaine Edmonds contracts, all of that stuff, like really being baked into decisions nowadays. Chris Janke coming in again with good questions. Assuming Dawkins, Ford, Morse, Feliciano, Williams start on the O-line, who's the odd man out to make the team as a backup? Brown, Bates, Butker, Doyle, or Lamp? Who's the odd man out? That's tough. The O-line is going to be so tough to project. Like, not even just the offensive line, but just the 9 or 10 guys. I know Chris knows how many they're going to keep because he's our roster guy, but it's like 9 or 10 that they keep every year, and it's going to be so tough to actually figure out which 9 it is. Do you want me to go first? Because, I mean, I don't even know. Like, I feel like Bates is probably the odd man out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you got to keep all interior linemen, as many as you possibly can, because we don't know what's going to happen there. But you definitely can't get rid of Lamp or Boteger with just bringing them in recently. I don't think it's worth it.
I think the interesting with Butker, though, is I'm not sure about this. I don't want to spread misinformation, but I think because he signed a restricted free agent contract, there's no dead cap tied to it. So if we release him, like it was like nothing happened.
Okay.
I think I could just, like I said, be spreading misinformation. But I also want to keep more interior offensive linemen, as many as we can, especially considering we drafted 2 tackles. Yep. I feel like we're very set at tackle. I'd be shocked if Doyle doesn't make the final roster. That's probably not the greatest thing to say, but I still would be shocked. I don't like, he's a 5th round pick, and like 5th round picks don't make rosters all the time. Right. But just because of the fact that he was our 2nd tackle taken, we didn't need to take him, kind of makes me feel like the Bills really liked him.
Yeah, I was about to say there had to be something we really liked about him.
Exactly. So I would be shocked from that standpoint that we wouldn't allow him to make the final roster. And I don't think he would slide. Like, we would probably have to protect him every week if he's on the practice squad. I'm not sure he would, other teams wouldn't want to grab him. Bates is interesting just because he can probably play all positions on this offensive line, but which one is his best position? Like which one is he really going to make this team on? Because now it's going to be really tough for him to make the team at tackle. And I think the easiest way for him to make the roster now is center, but he's going to be competing with probably Butker and Jack Anderson now for that backup center role. And we know Butker can play guard as well, but he's probably going to do everything he can to try and make this roster just like everyone else on the interior of this offensive line. So for my money, I'd say Bates is the odd man out of the people you presented, Chris, but oh my God, it's tough to project.
Completely agree.
All right, so Steve Rose, we got a Ertz, yes or no? I would not want to take away reps from Knox, who has high upside, and Ertz, who doesn't block, has much of his productivity on the slot. So I'd lean no, but wanted to get your thoughts. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, Steve. When we're done, you can go back and scroll back and find when we were talking about Ertz. But you bring up some good points. He doesn't block a ton, and he does have a lot of reps from the slot. But I mean, the Bills do run a lot of 11 personnel where their tight end isn't even attached to the offensive line. Like, they're running 11 personnel, but they're running it like it's a spread offense. So exactly. It's like, yeah, he's not giving us what we want in terms of blocking, but he has incredible route savvy and recognition of where zone coverages are and where to attack those zone coverages. So I don't want him taking away reps from Knox either, but bottom line is he's probably better than what Knox is right now. So if we're getting a better player, like, yeah, I'm okay with it. It comes down to compensation with Ertz. It comes down to what we're giving him and what we have to pay him for this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So then we'll drop to Jason Taylor here. In your opinions, do we keep 6 or 7 wide receivers? This is a Chris Janke question. Chris again with the roster, man. Do you have any hunches? Because I'm leaning towards 6. I don't think they'd keep 7.
I think with the establishment of we're going to air the ball out a lot more now, I could see 7 wide receivers easily be a thing. I could see all the moves leading to 7 wide receivers. We air the ball out so much now. Josh Allen has a rocket arm. We're throwing the ball 30, 40 times a game. I could see 7 wide receivers just to keep all of them fresh, always have fresh legs rotating in and out.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way to put it. Chris comes in and says in the chat, 7 would be a luxury. You're both absolutely right. It would be a luxury, but you hit the point home when you said like this team passes a lot. This team passes to wide receivers a lot.
Yep.
That's the reason why you would keep 7. Like, yeah, it's not what they've done traditionally. It's not the conventional way to, keep 7 guys and have to take, the opportunity cost is get rid of a guy at another position. But if we're really going to be using wide receivers as much as we did last year, or maybe even more, like it's possible, but there's an opportunity cost there. Like if we're keeping a 7th guy, like I want him to return. I want him to play special teams on top of just returning.
Right.
Like there's a lot that I would want from that 7th or 6th guy that makes the wide receiver room. But I think you put it best when you said like it could happen. It's probably not going to, but it wouldn't shock either of us because of how this offense is built. I think that's a good way to put it. We'll jump into Chris S's question here. This is like impossible to answer, Chris. Who's going to win the kick return job? Like it would be insane if either of us sniped this and, come week 1, we get the right player here. But Alec, first impressions, initial thoughts, do you have any player that you think is going to win that kick return job?
I could really see this being Isaiah McKenzie's way to absolutely solidify his spot on the roster.
Right.
He could be our returner and our gadget guy and just absolutely kill it in that role.
Yeah, I really want it to be Isaiah McKenzie. I just for whatever reason, I can't convince myself that he's going to do it. For whatever reason, I just think he's like pigeonholed into being this gadget guy and strictly punt returner. I don't know why. I just can't get past this rigidity of me thinking that he's not going to be able to kick return. For my money, like I want my kick returner to be like put your foot in the dirt and just go straight forward, like one cut, go straight forward.
Right.
I think Isaiah's a little bit too wiggly, and that works really well on punt returns.
Right.
But not as much on kick returns. And we saw him have some fumbling issues with like the Broncos back like towards his rookie years and stuff like that. So those are always concerns, but he's way past that now. I'm sure he's working on that. Like that's 2-3 years removed from those issues he had. But if I had to give a name that isn't Isaiah McKenzie, like it's really tough to find one because it's like, who is it? Brandon Powell, one of those guys that we signed this offseason. Like that would be so tough to actually just give him a roster spot and
just be kick returner.
Just to be kicker. It'd be another Andre Roberts situation. And it's like the difference there was like Andre Roberts was a top 3, if not the best kick returner in the league. Right. So it justifies giving him a roster spot for just that because he's so good at just that. Right. But there's no one like that right now on the Bills roster that's coming to my head right now that could do something like that. So, okay, Jason, I see you. Stevenson for kick returns. I see you. I would have to go back and look. I don't remember. I think he is a kick return guy, not a punt return guy. I think you're right. So yeah, that's another guy. That's definitely the other guy that could test him for that. But yeah, rookie. He's a rookie. Like, are they going to get? It's a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get from that rookie. And do you really want to trust your rookie with that kind of responsibility? Even like we talked about last week on the writers' room with the decline of special teams and kick returns in general. Like it's still a big responsibility to get that ball in your hands. Like it's a big responsibility.
Starts every game.
It starts every game, and we saw what happened to Leotis McKelvin in that dreaded Monday Night Football game. Like, you got to have that ball security, and if they don't, like, that's the biggest thing. It's like, yeah, we want you to get it to the 25-yard line, but we want you to get to the 25-yard line and still have the ball in your hands. All right, so we'll go Jason Taylor. You had another question up here. Diggs, Sanders, Beasley, Davis, Hodgins is 5. Who would be the other 1 or 2 that you would keep? It's funny that you lumped in Hodgins here, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it because that's what you asked. We'll say 1. If you had to do 1, Alec, who would be that final 1 that makes it? Because he didn't include McKenzie or Stevenson.
Right. That's exactly. Those are going to be my 2. But honestly, I think I'm taking McKenzie because I feel like he can do more. He has more experience. He can do the kick return game. Like, we don't know if Stevens can do the punt return game and the kick return game and play wide receiver at the same time yet.
Right. Yeah, if you're telling me Hodgins is making this roster and there's only 1 spot left on wide receivers, I'm not going to take the gamble on Stevenson. Obviously, I don't know what he is on the field because I don't have like a press pass or anything like that. But I think we could get away with Stevenson on the practice squad and assigning a protection to him every single week. I don't think there's a guarantee that a lot of teams would try to take him from us. I think he's one of those players that could definitely get taken off a practice squad, but I wouldn't want to part ways with McKenzie just like that. I really wouldn't. Like, it's tough for me to say that right now. Like, if Stevenson looks great in the preseason, then I could feel a lot differently and be like, okay, McKenzie could be the guy on the way out. But I haven't seen enough. Like, I don't know what Stevenson's going to be in the NFL yet. I don't know where he's going to contribute in year 1. So I can't kick McKenzie off the team yet. I just can't. We'll jump to Chris's question, and then we'll take one more after that because I see it right there. Actually, we'll take 2 more. We'll take 2 more after that. All right, Chris, what do you guys think might be the hardest cut the Bills will be forced to make during cut down time? I mean, I feel like it's the wide receivers.
Yeah, either wide receivers or the DNs, because we have a lot of DNs now. It's going to be tough to see which ones we're keeping.
Great point. That's a great point. Do you have any opinions on who is it? The 5? Yeah, the 5 defensive ends we're probably going to keep. Like, do you have any hot takes there? Like, oh, Addison's going to get cut. Like a lot of us are thinking / saying other things like that. There are any 5 that tickle your fancy?
I mean, I definitely think we have to keep Hughes to teach Basham and Rousseau. I think that's huge. I think Addison's going to stay because of the connection with McDermott. Right. And then I think we're also going to keep, what's his name? The other, the dude from the UK. I've never been able to
pronounce Obata?
Yes. Just because the McDermott ties too.
So that kicks out Daryl Johnson. That kicks Daryl Johnson out. Yeah, that's what's so tough for me. It's like, I really like F.A. Obata, but I just, whatever's happening right now, I can't bring myself to take anyone over Daryl Johnson. I've seen everything he does on special teams is just so huge. People sleep on special teams, and
they do
everything that special teams is. But even more than that, like, he's actually shown some flashes in terms of what he can do from a defensive perspective. And Matt Spies comes in and says Epinesa. We totally forgot about Epinesa. So that's 5 right there. Like, you're talking about that 5th spot. You're talking Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison. Then you're talking about the 2 rookies, Rousseau, Basham, and there's a 5th spot available. That's it. Hypothetically, there's a 5th spot available, and that's it. And that 5th spot is going to either Epinesa, Daryl Johnson, or F.A. Obata. Like, it has to be Epinesa, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, I just changed my answer. The second you said Epinesa, I realized I messed up.
No, but we just did a film session on him yesterday. Like, I like Epinesa a lot. We hear how much praise he's getting from the coaching staff and everyone else. So I'd be shocked if there's just no way. There's no way Epinesa is getting cut. I think really what it comes down to fit in an Obata or a Daryl Johnson, it's going to be a veteran cut. It's going to be if they decide to take the savings that they can get from cutting Hughes, although I wouldn't like it. Like you said, I prefer Hughes. Personally, I prefer Hughes to Addison when it comes to the veteran to keep. But when it comes to financials, Hughes is the guy to cut.
Right.
You save so much more money when it comes to cutting either Hughes or Addison. Addison has a much larger dead cap. So it's really tough to pick one or the other. Hopefully, I don't even want to say hopefully we don't have to cut either, because like the opportunity cost of keeping both Addison and Hughes means we have to cut both Obata and Daryl Johnson. So honestly, maybe you're right. I think defensive end might be harder to project than wide receiver is, which is nuts. Good problems to have, though.
That is good. That is always a good problem to have.
Yeah. All right, so last two, we're going to take this one from Y, and then Brian Freedom comes in with another one. We'll start with this one, though, from Y. What running backs won't make the team? I mean, I'll give you my locks, Singletary and Moss. Yeah. I think outside of that, I think there's a lot of talking points. You have any thoughts?
I mean, I completely agree with you. It's Singletary and Moss. Those are the two locks. Everybody else's job is up in the air.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit on the Air Raid Hour, what we think is going to happen with that running back 3 position. I actually talked about it in my most recent article, like talking about the running back room and all that stuff. It's really tough to project that third guy, because that third guy, I really want him to play special teams the way Taiwan Jones does, because I talked about this on the Air Raid Hour on Thursday, and I said, like, think about the amount of times that TJ Yeldon wasn't active on game day, despite him being a better running back than Taiwan Jones. Yep. If you're not producing or doing anything and contributing on special teams, it's going to be tough to make you active on game day. Right. And we saw examples of, I think it was in the Titans game and maybe even the Chiefs game, Taiwan Jones comes in for some offensive snaps. But boy, would I prefer that to be like a Matt Breida this year.
Yeah.
It's just like we can't make Matt Breida active on game day unless he's doing something on special teams. So, and he doesn't even, I talked with Chris about this in the comments. They don't even have to be the gunner. Like, someone else can be the gunner if it means like kicking Taiwan Jones off the team to keep Matt Breida. Like, Breida doesn't have to be the gunner. He just has to do something on special teams, and then someone else can be the gunner.
Right.
But it's really tough to project that running back 3. Right now, I'd put my money on Breida, but it's really tough to do anything with a lot of these questions, guys, just because it's like these are all personal preference answers from us, because we don't have enough information in training camp to tell you that these guys are better than the other guys. And we don't know how they're going to gel with other players on the roster, with the coaching staff, stuff like that. There's so much in between. All right, so we'll go to our last question here. Last question of the night. Thank you, everyone in the chat. You guys have been very, very great with your participation. It really helps us out. We love to answer your questions. We love to, help you guys out and give you guys what you want to see. So last question here. I lost it. All right, back. Brian Freedom, Fromm or Webb, QB3. Who you taking?
That's a tough question. I mean, personally, I'm taking Fromm, but you can make argument either way. They're pretty much equals, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's not much that sets one apart from the other. There really isn't. When it comes to what they're going to provide from a knowledge standpoint, I'd rather Webb, just because he has years under his belt. Right. He knows the playbook probably better than Fromm. That's me just kind of speculating based on the amount of years he's been with the team. But when it comes to like what we invested into Fromm, like I know it was only a 5th round draft pick, but what we've invested into Fromm, the fact that Mitch Trubisky is only on a 1-year deal, who is the backup after this year for Josh Allen, when you start asking those questions, it's like, yeah, maybe I do want Fromm to make this team. But then if you're picking like a Fromm or a Webb to make the team, I don't know if I even want to keep 3 quarterbacks on the final 53. I
Yeah,
kind
that's
of want
fair.
to keep one. I'd only like to keep 2 on the final 53 and then a third on the practice squad. But if you're throwing Jake Fromm on the practice squad, is he guaranteed not to get stolen? Whereas Davis Webb, I think he's more guaranteed. Like he's not going to merit a protection as much as Jake Fromm would.
Yeah.
So that's where it becomes really interesting. And that's going to be a very, very tight position battle for a weird like backup position. And that's why I love that preseason is coming back this year, because, you know, years past, it's like, okay, we got to figure out like who the starters are, like who's good on this Bills team. Now it's like, we got to figure out like who's backing up these starters. Like we got to figure out who these backups are, which is a weird, once again, great problem to have, because we haven't experienced it. I know you're young just like me. Like we haven't experienced a lot of these good problems, but it's really nice experiencing them.
Yeah, it feels great.
All right, guys. Sorry if you guys have any more questions, but that's our time for tonight. You guys were great. Alec, you were great. It's great to get on and have another platform to talk about the Bills. I hope you guys enjoyed us. I'm going to toss Alex. I'm going to toss the link for Alex's most recent article on the Buffalo Fanatics blog in the chat right now, so you can check it out. It's very informational about that blocking, about all those blocking assignments. Pretty much more in depth than what we just talked about on air. We were really just applying it to the Buffalo Bills. In the article itself, he's very informational about what needs to be done from an assignment standpoint. So if you're interested, please check it out. It helps all of us and supports Alex specifically. If you want to check out anything else, you can find it at thebuffalofanatics.com. Support all of our writers.
Yep.
They're all great. We're all doing work every single day. We got articles dropping every single day. It's not just us. It's those guys in the background. Yeah, like we're trying to get more of these guys on the writer's room so you can know the face and the person writing these words on the screen that you're reading it on. We're going to try to introduce you guys to more of the writers, but, you know, it's a Sunday night. You know, people got things to do on Sunday nights, get back into their work week, you know, get back into their grind. So got to respect it, but we're going to start to try and introduce you to some more faces in the Buffalo Fanatics writers room. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. And without further ado, go Bills.
Go Bills.